Beautiful day here in paradise, another beautiful podcast on the USA MedBed 369. And I'm with Miss Nadine Shaw, who is in beautiful Australia and has gotten up very early. Thank you so much for doing that.
You're
Welcome to the
welcome.
podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
It's great. I always love getting international people in. We've had people from Dubai and other parts of the world, but I don't know, we've talked to definitely people in Australia. I don't think on this podcast, but Nadine, I just want to give a quick bio so people can get a little bit to know about you, kind of where we're going. But you're really big on the mind-body connection. You're a personal trainer. You're big in epigenetics. You're basically into all the things that make us healthier, smarter, and living longer with all those different things. And you do have a podcast, which I'll be on eventually here in the next week or two, which is Life Health the Universe podcast page.io. That address will be down below. So, with your official bio there being said, thank you once again for joining us. And how is everything down in Australia today?
It's pretty good. It's still dark. So, my
Sunrise down
husband and
there.
I are, as you mentioned, personal trainers. We had a bit of a tree change about 5 years ago. So we moved from Sydney into the mid north coast, which is like part way up Australia. It's a very big country, as is the US. But we've moved to the countryside, so we've got a gym on our property now, and so local people in this small town come to train. So we're normally up early, so it's not completely out of the ordinary for me to be up at 6 a.m. But I'm not usually talking very much,
Yeah,
so we'll see
exactly.
how we
Throwing
go.
stuff at you really quick here. I love that. So, personal trainer, how long have you been doing personal training?
So I've been in the personal training industry for 20 years. My husband longer. So I got into it when I was about 30. My husband's done it basically his whole life. So
That
yeah,
is
it's
awesome.
it's
And obviously, with the personal training goes all these other subjects with the mind-body connection because I mean, it's all integrated into one. Working out really is training the mind at the same time
mm.
and, enhancing that and building discipline and all those different things. But tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about your story, how you got started, and what has kind of brought you up to this point that we're at today.
Okay. So I back when I first started personal training when I was 30, actually a little bit later than that, CrossFit came onto the scene. You've probably heard about CrossFit. It's pretty big out there now, but we were kind of early adopters of CrossFit. And so I actually competed in the CrossFit Games the first time they opened it up to the world. It was a much simpler experience then than it is now, but I competed for Australia in the CrossFit Games in 2009, which seems like a very long time ago now. But yeah, I just became started becoming more and more aware of that internal dialogue and how our thoughts shape our behaviors and the outcomes that mostly in performance. So if you, compared if you go into a competition with the attitude of I want to win compared to I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this or what are people going to think of me, like that, those kind of things started to become more apparent to me. So that was kind of probably what first piqued my interest with that human behavior stuff. And the more years I've worked in the industry, the more I've seen that stuff play out in my own journey, but
Mhm.
also in the journey of my clients, the people I work with. Even in terms of injuries, when you see someone behaving in a particular way, like really in their masculine, wanting to push, wanting to push, wanting to push, and then hurting themselves, and it being in on the feminine side, so or on the masculine side of their body, which I always get muddled up. So don't ask me about that. You have to Google it. Yeah, so that's kind of where it all started out. it's been a look. There are so many things that have happened in the last 20 years. I got pregnant when I was 40, but that was kind of like, again, an energetic thing. I was pushing really hard in my training. I had to pull right back, but there was also an emotional, you know, I had to believe that it was possible because I went through IVF. And so I started to, really connect with that idea that our thoughts shape our reality.
They
And it's just
100%
kind
do.
of,
I mean,
yeah.
as I get older, I understand that so much better. And, my whole morning, every morning starts out with that, basically that talk. And it's the manifestation. There's a gentleman named Tom Kieran who has an amazing YouTube channel called Be Something Wonderful. But Tom does a lot of stuff, talking about Neville Goddard, Louis Hay, Proctor, Napoleon Hill. Like he's a culmination of all of them. And so you always get a little bit of a mixture from him. But I have about a 15 to 20-minute ride to work, and every single morning without fail, I'm on there projecting and programming my day right from the get-go. I find, it's interesting. I find it's one thing to know it, it's another thing to live it in the moment, right? In the moment. Because we can all say, yeah, I've heard that, and we can all say, yeah, I've read that book or whatever it might be, but there's a difference between hearing it and living it. And you have to stay in the present moment and be conscious of it because life in general, every phone call, every next contact, every next bill that comes in the mail is all something that can shift it out of place immediately. And you have to be able to catch yourself. You have to be able to be conscious of it, and you have to structure it all in a way where it's all part of the plan for what you're doing to manifest, right? And so paying bills is fun and paying bills is great. And I'm sending money out to the universe. And, there's ways that you look at these things to be able to really stay present in that vibration. Because the minute that you're out of it, the minute you're frustrated, the minute that you say, oh no, or whatever, then you're not actively living the reality that you are trying to achieve. And I find that, there's one part of it to be conscious of it, and then there's that other part where it's like when you catch yourself going off the trail a little bit, it's like, oh yes, there's a left turn there and I need to get back onto the manifestation trail. So I find that morning programming where it is total silence, just me and my ride to work is just such a beautiful time to project the day, think through what I want that day to be, and actively start visualizing the outcomes that I'm looking for in that given moment or, that next 12 hours. What are your
It's
thoughts?
yeah, it definitely takes practice, and I would not say that I am really good at it yet. Uh, I feel like there are so many layers as well. Like, you first of all you start to become conscious of when you get pulled out or distracted, or when you're first in that, time where you're going, oh, I'm actually thinking those things, like where you can witness it. But yeah, it's easy in everyday life to fall back into those old programs, isn't it?
Mhm. It is because that's exactly what they are. They're programs,
Yeah.
and it's the way we've been structured to think. And we have to break into the infinite where all miracles and all possibilities are possible at any given second. And that is the most beautiful part about it is like coming back with childlike um, thoughts and saying, look, anything and everything is possible. And somehow I've been put into a box and I need to take those walls down around me and stretch back out and really start having some fun with showing, what's really possible. And then having some small victories and saying, wow, I did that, or, I've accomplished this. And then, from those small victories come the larger ones. But, it is a process for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Something popped into my head then. Oh, have you heard of Robert Edward Grant?
I have not.
Okay, he's got quite a large YouTube platform thing. Anyway, he talks about us as the, our whole human experience, that it's almost like part of the game,
It is.
that we come in and we forget who we are.
Mhm.
And then as we journey through our lives, through our experiences, and not, maybe not everyone will have this as part of their journey, but it sounds like you and I are on it.
Mhm.
You start to realize that actually we are something much bigger than the 3D world that we sort of started out in, but it's all deliberate. Like it
Yes.
wouldn't be fun if we
Right.
didn't if we didn't know it. Oh, sorry. I did tell you I might get my words tangled up because
Oh,
it's
you're
so
good.
early
You're
in the
good. You're
morning.
good.
Yeah, that if we knew when we came in, then there would be no fun in it.
Right.
It's like a simulation.
Yes. And I
And we
think it's
start
important that
to
everybody
operate.
knows that the more difficult it gets, the funner it should be. Just, just throwing that out there because it was interesting. Napoleon Hill, or no, maybe it was Bob Proctor, but they said that, when you're experiencing pain, that is the time where you experience the most growth. And that it's how you look and deal with the pain when it's coming at you that really determines if this is going to be a meaningful experience that you'll grow on, or if you're going to go sideways and have to re-experience it through other different, circumstances. And it was a short, it was only like 60 seconds, which I thought was brilliant because it doesn't need to be a long, complex message, but it was one that when I saw that, it shocked me. And I'm like, wow, that is very profound. I better watch this like 4 times and really kind of absorb what this message is because, it's part of the journey. And, one of my favorite little sayings for people that have watched my podcast is I talk about the samurai sword and the samurai sword being the most lethal weapon on the battlefield for a very long period of time. And the samurai warriors were just they were bad dudes. They were really in the warrior culture. They were very much on the top of the pyramid when it came to some of the greatest civilizations. Even the Mongols on at least 2 occasions tried to go into Japan, and the samurai just they just handed it right back to them and they went back over to their island. But the samurai sword starts off as a big raw piece of steel, and it takes hundreds of thousands of slams with a hammer to sharpen that sword and turn it into that lethal weapon. And when I'm dealing with people or I talk to people that are just getting it handed to them, I say, well, you're becoming a samurai sword. You're literally, taking all that life can get you, but every time you overcome the next obstacle or the next, hour or the next 10 minutes and you get through the next challenge, it's hardening you and making you sharper and more lethal so that you're able to navigate life and achieve the dreams and the hopes and be the person like yourself that's waking up at 6 in the morning to help somebody else achieve their dreams, right? Because that's a very personal thing, being a personal trainer. Number one, the whole thing is geared towards helping others, right? So you have the service to self and the service to others, which, in this day and age, we're trying to get the humanity more into service to others and less out of service to self. But I'd like to kind of get into this a little deeper because you're not only doing that, but you're getting to learn everything about this person. You're learning their strengths, you're learning their weaknesses, you learn how hard they can push, you learn what their goals and their dreams, and you know about their families. So tell me a little bit about how you got into the personal training and tell me what it's like, working with these clients and how that kind of inspires you.
Okay, so how I got into it is kind of interesting because people ask me this, and but you can look at, how you were talking about having trust in the process and life, kind of that idea of karma and dharma, that the life path that starts to unfold in front of you, and it's kind of like it's there, but we don't always see it, or plan it. So I was actually I trained in theatre, when I was in my late teens, early 20s. And so I was working in hospitality in a cafe in Sydney. And I was constantly thinking, how am I going to get out of this? How am I going to get out of this? And I was working next to a gym. And so I just had this like penny drop moment where I was like, I'm going to teach aerobics because I thought, performance. And I didn't really think beyond that. I just thought, oh, that would be fun. And it's led me into this, so I went to college, I worked in the cafe, and it just led me into this 20-year career. So again, it was like just chance meetings. I'd spoke to someone and said, I'm looking for work when I'd finished my studies, and they knew someone, and they introduced me to the gym that I started to work in that my now husband, owned. So it was like all of these things unfolded quite naturally. And I don't think I ever would have expected that in my youth, to be working in a gym. And it's something I've been doing for 20 years. Yeah, and I feel like part of that journey was to meet my husband, and now I've had two children. We've had two children together. So that's all evolved. It's really hard to sort of disconnect one part of your path to another. And when you start to step back and look at all of the unfolding, you yeah, it's really hard to kind of section off bits and pieces.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress.
Oh, you're good.
So I guess my connection with my clients has been quite something that I tend to be able to do quite naturally. And again, this is part of the reason I probably feel interested in the human behavior side of things. And I've started to segue more as part of this journey, segue more into the esoteric and astrology, because I think that kind of starts to play out in our human behavior and our patterns and our
Mhm.
story. I certainly don't have all the answers yet, but yeah, I just have and it seems a natural way of connecting with clients and to get into that deeper part of building a relationship, because teaching someone how to do some exercise is only one small part of it.
Yeah,
It's yeah,
100%.
it is building the relationship. You're absolutely
Right,
right.
right.
Understanding them,
Yeah, I mean,
teaching them what their limits are.
exactly. Exactly, because when you get to know them as people, then you have that natural intuition to say, this
Mm,
person needs a little bit of a push, or this person I need to
mm,
soften up on, or, this person, like you get to know them, and no two clients, obviously, for you are probably the same. They all have different, different goals, different things they're trying to achieve, different places in life. And so, you have to kind of cater to them and know intuitively, in order for me to get this person to the next level. But the thing about it is that your personal appearance and your your self-worth and everything is built so much on the image of who you are and what you look like, that you're
mm.
really helping build self-confidence, determination. I mean, like, we could probably sit on this call for an hour talking about the benefits that come with getting yourself in shape. But I'm sure that kind of what I was getting at is that when you're with these people, number one, there has to be a level of compassion, because you have to enjoy the journey with them, and kind of like there is that part that I'm sure of being compassionate. You're going, all right, I see where this person's at, and then be able to mold to what that person needs. So can you talk a little bit about that, and maybe some of the varieties of different customers or clients that you've got that you work with?
Yep, sure. So I think that the something that's really important for me is that my experiences help to better understand the experiences that other people might be going through, and that goes back to that psychological process of, not thinking that you can't, or the language that you use when you're in the process of being in
Mhm.
the gym. Because you, like, for example, yesterday I had a client who was going to lift a weight that she'd never done before, or I suggested that she do that, and she said, I can't do that, before she'd even tried. I won't be able to do that, or I can't do that. And then when she tried, well, she didn't try, she picked up the weight and she was like, no, it's not moving. And I said, well, you made that decision before
Yeah.
we'd even picked up the weights. So like having those experiences, I having those personal experiences where I've been in that position, I feel like I can recognize it better in other people and teach them their what's going on for them. But like you said, you do have to be sensitive to what they're going through. I feel often what is really helpful is trying to find a way of them making the decisions. So teaching them how to feel. What did that feel like? How much more do you think you could do? Or do you think you could do more? So that they start to take back control, because I think we can be really disconnected from our bodies. And we know, and I'm sure we've all heard about people, emotional eating, for example. It's all very in the head, and it's a disconnection from the body, and I don't know, it's probably different for everyone, but a lack of self-love, a lack of self-worth. The talking and the action, it's all going on up here without any sort of connection to the body.
Mhm.
So bringing someone back into, like, they've taken control of that, and knowing that the things that they do and the choices that they make when they're working in the gym can, they can control it, and they do have some, trying to think of the word, license over what's going on.
Mhm.
That's a big part of it. In terms of the different people that we've trained, I've trained people usually around the same sort of age, anywhere between 30 and 50. More now, I'm training women who are kind of in that change of life, perimenopausal type women. So again, that takes some kind of understanding and experience to know what they're going through and how their body's changing. But we've had people come to us, and I've had people say, you've changed my life, you've saved my life, because they've been given, feedback from their doctors that they're unwell, they've got high blood pressure, or, they're on the edge of being put on medications for a particular reason because of lifestyle factors. And they've made the commitment, and they attribute their success partially to the support that they've been given through the coaching. So that's pretty cool.
That's
When
really
someone
cool.
says you saved my life, that's
Yeah.
like pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's truly inspiring knowing that you're out there making a difference. It's different than just showing up, you know what I mean? Like there's
Mm,
certain jobs where you're just going to show up and do a manual task, whether it's stocking shelves or working on a forklift, but when you're really having that personal interaction, the other thing about fitness in general, it ties into some other subjects that I think are fairly deep, and I think that they also we could talk about them. But number one, when you're working out, you're releasing endorphins, right?
mm,
And there's so many people nowadays that have issues with depression or even have issues with chemical abuse of some type. And so, I know in my past, I was around a lot of people that had chemical dependency issues, and working out, gives you like that stimulation that like that release of endorphins. I think actually cold plunges now are showing to like release so much of that ecstasy hormone that you're actually getting like that same lift from a cold plunge, not I probably need to be in one, honestly. I'm not. They've just put one into our fitness club over by my place. But you have that part of it, which is overcoming a lot of psychological issues, might, with depression or not feeling good or low self-esteem, which then kind of gets into the chronic eating, which you're talking about.
Mm,
But to touch on and not specifically women in general, but statistically, we're finding out that 30% of women that break their hip will never walk again. And what's happening, it's not the hip, it's not the bone, it's the loss of muscle mass. And as the
yep.
muscle mass starts going down, then the bone obviously is also going to start atrophying. And then, they're also saying now that, and this is for men and women, but your longevity is really based on your leg strength and your core and your leg strength. And I'd like to get your feedback on that because, this isn't about squatting 500 pounds. This is about maintaining an active lifestyle and doing something that'll maintain muscle mass or even promote it a little bit. So, with that being said, what are your thoughts on those subjects?
Very interesting that you've brought that up because a part of my journey has been about this the desire to live long. And my husband and I talk about health span rather than lifespan. So, dying when you're old rather than dying from a disease. And so there's definitely been an interest in like practices that help to promote longevity, including sauna, ice baths, and these are all some of the things, the biohacking things that we're going to talk about when you are a guest on my podcast. But yeah, strength training it's a thing. It's essential. And in fact, my husband and I, because we work together, we often come from a place of like, it's better to show up and do something than not do anything at all. However, there is more and more research showing that you actually do have to push yourself. Like you need to get to the point of failure in your strength training. And that can mean different things for different people, obviously. But you do need to challenge yourself. Like if you're just using the same weights all the time and it feels easy, like there is some benefit to that. There's no doubt about it. And there's benefit to walking, really high benefit to walking, and mental degenerations, like improving the risks of the mental stuff. But Darren's training my husband, he's training some older clients at the moment. And he's said, the more research that he does, he needs to push them along. He needs to like encourage them to do something that's just outside their comfort zone, because that's where the real benefits lie in terms of like aging well. Grip
Mhm.
strength is another really good indicator of overall body strength. So if someone can't hold on to something, like a kettlebell, for example, if they can't hold on to it for less than, more than a minute, then depending on what the weight is, then that's an indicator of overall body strength. So you can pretty much determine how strong someone is based on their grip strength.
Mhm.
But yeah, a really important it's a really important component of our overall health. A perfect example, my stepmom, she's not yet 70. She's very active. She walks, she cycles, she's gardening, she's doing all of those physical activities, but she's never strength trained. And she slipped on a step a couple weeks ago, put her hand back to save her, and snapped her wrist because she hasn't got the strength in her musculature to support her skeletal structure. So yeah, it's a
I mean,
it's a necessity.
the reason I like to get into this is because, everybody, I'm known for a lot of things. I don't know if but technology related stuff, which I
Mm,
find is phenomenal. But I think the point that I try to make more often than not is that that only goes so far. You know what I mean? Like the strength training and the fitness and the nutrition, you've got to do everything you can in your power with your God-given abilities. And, since I'm also in the medical industry, and I'll just hand this over here. Those are
Oh, wow.
ICU beds over there, along among
Okay.
other crystals, and the whole place is actually exam tables. But I'm dealing every day with people with ALS, MS, you know, quadriplegic, paraplegic, and everybody has something that they can do. Now, everybody's journey is different, but I do feel that like if we are giving ourselves an honest look in the mirror, and for me, it's a very honest look because it's a very humbling call to get with people that you're talking to that when you sell them a bed, they'll probably never get out of that bed, or that might be there's times where the bed doesn't even get there before the person passes. But then it's like, well, but what's my excuse? There is no excuse, right? Because I'm talking to people every day that don't have that option, and I do feel that there is a part of it where everybody needs to do their part to maintain health. And I like to say the word coddle, right? Because sometimes people need to be coddled. And there's certainly a part of me that's very compassionate and loving. But there's a part of me that's also very feisty, and I'm not going to accept mental weakness, and I'm not accepting laziness, or I'm not accepting people to come to me and say, "Hey, I really need a med bed, and I've got to have it." And then I'm finding out that they're lazy. They're sitting around smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, eating Cheetos, and they've put themselves in this position. I get a lot of these people. How can I be 20 years younger? Because there are med beds that are quote unquote out there that do age regression. And I know, people have used those, and that's a whole nother story. But there's a chronological age and a biological age, right? I'm 59, so on my driver's license it says I'm 59. However, biologically, I want to still be in my 40s or even younger, but at least in my 40s. But you don't get like that by sitting in a med bed. You don't get like that and let's say you did that, there is an effect that technology, there's a lot of technology that's med bed related technology. It's really good for rejuvenation, giving you energy, just getting you to the point where it's like, I want to get out and go do something. And that's there. But the goal is to use it occasionally, almost like you would like a sauna, whirlpool, a supplemental technology to kind of, and get some benefit from. But for those people that are out there that aren't doing the heavy lifting, aka doing the walking or getting some light dumbbells or whatever it is, my grandmother lived to be 104,
Oh,
and at the
wow.
time she passed, she was still going up and down stairs. And I'll never forget, she told me my great grandparents, who I was able to spend time with as a kid, she said the minute that they stopped becoming mobile, they deteriorated very fast and both were dead within a year or two. The minute that they stopped, becoming active. And so, I want to say it in a respectful way, of course, but, I do feel that everybody needs to do an honest assessment of themselves and what they can do to make that change, to make that start, or like you're saying, which I really appreciate, what can I do to take it to the next level, right? Like I'm kind of in this routine and it's great and it's working, but maybe there's something I could do. Maybe I could carry some wrist weights with me, or maybe I put a little backpack on and carry a little extra weight, or maybe I start hitting a little bit more of an incline on the treadmill, or whatever it might be. But the goal for all of us is to push ourselves a little bit, and you set the bar, and then it's like, well, what can I do to say, yeah, man, I just went a little step higher. And I think with what you do, that's really your goal, is to kind of figure out what the baseline is for a lot of these people, and then encourage them, walk them through, and share with them the victories that they get when they start achieving things like what you're talking about earlier, that they didn't expect, right? That they thought that they couldn't do, but then they do it, and then they have to reprogram their brain and say, yes, this is possible, and I am doing it, and then there is that sense of victory. So I'd kind of like to get your thoughts on that.
Yes. my thoughts on that. There is, and that's where the whole mind body thing comes in, right?
Exactly.
It's and even that behavioral stuff that you were talking about, where someone wants a one of your products to help them live longer, but they're laying on the couch, they're smoking a pack of cigarettes, they're eating crap. There's a push for us to want to get them out of that cycle because we know the importance of doing all of the lifestyle stuff. And I'm really interested in that idea of creating habits. I'm segueing away a little bit from what your final question was.
No, you're good. I like that because it
But
is.
I yeah, because people there's a real barrier to entry for a lot of people, and that is that behavioral stuff, right? And it goes into all of that neuroscience of and being addicted to things, and oh, the list just goes
Yeah.
on, and this is kind of like what I'm trying to unravel. But yeah, I used James Clear Atomic Habits a lot with a group of clients that I was working with a few years ago. I had a little business doing sort of healthy lifestyle changes, and just starting off with those small things, which can lead to great victories. It doesn't have to be something enormous. It can be, increasing the incline on the treadmill. It can be going a little bit faster, lifting a little bit heavier, but it can also just be getting up and going for a 5-minute walk, depending on where you're at, or stretching when you've been at your computer for 5 hours, or whatever it might be. So, yeah, it's just such a minefield of like and so many different people, because we can talk about all these things, and you have obviously got the mental power and the inclination to work on your health and to practice mindfulness and all of the things that you do in your everyday life. But some people go, oh yeah, well, it's all very well for you to say that you do it, but it's not that easy for me, and it's not that easy for people sometimes, and often. And this is another thing that I'm kind of really interested in. They need that light bulb moment where they have some kind of medical emergency
Yeah.
before they take a step. I've
Hmm.
gone completely off topic because that just opened up an entire can of worms.
No, but you're right.
It's
But it's like the goal is to avoid it. But guess what? Now you're pressed up with your own mortality. And now it's like, guess what? You just had a stroke or you just had a heart attack or you've got hopefully even found out before it's come there. I find that at my age, I see a lot of people like grandparents, because people in their 50s and 60s are grandparents. It's kind of crazy.
I
Um,
know.
but they're like, I want to be able to be around when my grandkids
Yeah.
get married or when my kids get married. I find that, if you put the motivation into something other than yourself and say, I owe it to these little people to be there for them, and I owe it to be able to share these memories, and I want to be there for my kids. And, you know, I hate to say this, and I'm going to just say it anyway. I get a lot of women that come in here with their husbands, and they're worried to death about their husband, and they're very lackadaisical about it. They're like, well, I know she's really worried. Yeah, because you've been married for like 30, 40 years, and she really loves you. And clearly, you're so like in tune to your own reality that that's not waking you up. I mean, but I just find women are, I don't mean to be disrespectful to men, but I find they're much more intuitive and much more intelligent overall. And they can feel into situations and they can understand that, there's something going on that's not right. Like they are so dialed into their husbands. And that's not saying that men don't have those same qualities. I think overall women are just more tuned in that way. But it's like you have to think of somebody but yourself. You're putting your wife, your family, you're putting all these people through emotional hardship because they know that you're at high risk for this or high risk for that. You're not doing anything. And it's just a ticking time bomb, and it's only a matter of time. And everybody knows it, including the people that are living that reality. I think that, the analogy that I'm thinking of as I talk to you is that there's always points in life where we're on the highway, right? And we're going down and everything's good. But then there are those times where you pull off the side of the road, you hit a rest stop. And sometimes you don't come out of that rest stop. And we all know what it's like to be on the highway. We've all been healthy. We've all, been able to go 70, 80 miles an hour. But the goal is just to get out of the rest stop and get back on the highway. And it doesn't matter if you're in the right lane going slow or you're getting ready to speed back up again. That's I call it the cycle, the river of life. There's days when you're going down the rapids and you're just getting pounded. There's days when you're in a nice little pool and you can just relax. But the river of life doesn't stop flowing, and you're eventually going to go over the falls. And there's a couple different ways to deal with that. Number one, you can freak out and try to paddle against the current. That might help you a while, but eventually you got to let go and you got to let that whole flow take place. So there's times in my life where I've been very, very fit. Like I've set a very high standard, and there's been times when I'm not. And as much as I hate to say it, I am not in peak physical condition right now. Although I know where that bar is at, and I know what I need to do to get there. And it's one workout and one victory at a time. And it's that one victory, and then putting another victory with another victory and saying, okay, now I'm getting back on a roll and this feels good. And this week it'll be three times. And next week it'll be four, and pretty soon. But you touched on a very powerful word, and the word is habit. And we're creatures of habit, right? And so the habits are very important. And theoretically, it takes about 3 weeks to set a habit. So when you can get into a routine and you can do it for at least 3 weeks, now you're getting up and you're automatically doing it on autopilot because it's become part of your routine, right? And so, I just feel like there is that part, that everybody needs to say, hey, I want to live to 90. See, all the anti-aging, all the biohacking, all the med bed technology, the goal is to cross the finish line healthy. The goal is to not start falling apart at 60, being in a wheelchair at 70, and being in bed at 80. I mean, that's just there. And if you are in that situation, then the technology, like the terahertz wand, any of this stuff is there to get out of that. It's to get you back where you can be back to your healthy life. If it's being on grounding beds and reducing inflammation so you're not so sore so you can get up and do stuff, or rejuvenate so you've got whatever, that's kind of there to kickstart the battery, so to speak. But that desire and that ability to want to do it for more than something, and to do it for yourself, I mean, that in itself is enough. But if that's not enough doing it, look at those kids, look at those grandkids, and think of something other than yourself to just say, look, I'm going to do this and I'm going to show anybody. And it doesn't have to be talked about. It can be internal dialogue. And that's why I love how what you're doing with the personal training, it ties into the mind body connection, because that's 100% of what it is. And that gets into the spiritual realm, that gets into everything, right? So that connection, is probably one of the most important things for all of us to really be in tune with and figure out, how we can get ourselves to higher parts of life and achieve more and live life better and share love, share laughter, and live healthier. So, I mean, what you're
Yes,
doing, talk about your
definitely.
podcast, and I'd like to hear about some of the guests. You talked about, who was that gentleman you mentioned earlier, that was somebody that you listened to the podcast?
Oh, he hasn't been on my podcast.
No, but I mean, but you're getting good stuff from him. What was his
Yes,
name?
yeah. Robert Edward Grant.
Robert Edward Grant. So
Yeah.
talk about some of the people that motivate you and some of the people that you're getting good inspirational information from.
Okay, so can I just step back? I will,
Yes, you could
but
take
I
five
just want to
steps
step
back because
back
I
on
just
what
ran
you
fast there.
on what
Yeah.
you just said about all of the things. Um, the thing that popped up for me in that part of the conversation was, unfortunately, the messaging that we receive on a wide scale is one of When you get to 40, you're halfway. Like, yeah, it's midlife. You and it's all downhill from there. That's kind of like the messaging we get. By the time you're 50, you'll be on a certain amount of medications. By the time you're 60, this will be happening. You won't be able to move as well. Like there's all this, and some of it's quite subliminal messaging that we see in media, in the stories that are being told about what it is to be human. People die, and they die of heart disease or cancer or one thing or another. So these are the messages that we're getting all of the time.
Hmm.
And so I think that part of the process of being a personal trainer and to be connecting with people is to teach people the possibilities. And the work that you do is the same, right? It's like you've got this amazing technology that actually is retelling the story of what's possible. And that kind of segues into what my podcast is about. It's called Life, Health, in the Universe because of that idea of mind body connection, but also the life part is like the stories that we share and the connectedness of all of the things and how we relate with each other and how important it is to connect. Health and the universe and the interconnectedness of those things. And we were talking about that, when someone pulls off the highway because something happens to the car, and sometimes they don't get back on the highway or they go over the
Yeah,
waterfall,
the
those
ditch.
analogies you used. They often have those health realizations. I got to do something about my health, but they also have they often have those spiritual awakenings. Those awakenings can happen in those moments as well.
Hmm.
That's not the only thing that the podcast is about, but it's really an exploration of our health, like how we can improve our health naturally through the sorts of technologies that you provide, crystal healing, through our minds, meditation, breath work, all of saunaing, natural therapies. What's happening to our health? So educating people, because I think that the mainstream messaging is, you eat these types of food and there's advertising about it, and it's just
Hmm.
full of crap. So it's like,
Yeah.
what can, then there's the health crisis. And so you take this medication, it's like, well, actually there's this whole other realm of possibilities that will help us to live well, live long, live healthily. And so the podcast is really about trying to share as much of that with the audience as possible. And I can't be a professional in all of those things, but I'm really interested in all of those things. And so I just try and share as much information as possible with as many different guests as possible. So I've got, natural healers, people who are professional in their field, even a natural foot podiatrist who, talks about barefoot and the benefits of that. People who are making natural products. Oh, the list goes on. Authors.
Yeah, and the beauty of it is, like, even with me, I get to learn every single day from
Yes.
people. I feel like I'm a student of life, and the goal is to, share the experiences like we were talking before we went online. It's all about sharing the story, of
Mm.
what it's taken to get to these different things and what you've overcome, what you've learned, how you've been able to help yourself and others. And I just believe like everybody has a story and there's just always something that you can learn. And so that's why I really love the podcast. And that's why it's always fun to not only, have you on, be on your podcast because, there's different synergy every single time we get together. I'd like to see if you, and I don't mean to throw you on the spot, but I love throwing people on the spot. So, but for somebody that's out there that has kind of gotten themselves into the rest stop and they need to kind of get back into motion, what do you have any advice or maybe two or three things, or what would you say to that person? What would be what would you say to them, and what would be like a starting point for somebody that you would say, here's kind of where your first victory is going to be. It's going to be your first walk, and the walk, like give me some context of kind of how people that are listening that are like, because I feel first off, I feel everybody finds these videos for a reason, right? And so we're talking, but maybe at some point in time, there's somebody watching this video that's kind of in that rut right now. That's like, yeah, that sounds like me, and da da da. So, for anybody that's out there, the video found you. You didn't find the video, right? But what kind of advice, or where do you think is a good starting point to begin those first victories?
Golly gosh. Well, the sleep is essential. So regular sleep, regular bedtime, regular wake times, really important. It just has a knock-on effect to so many other things. I know that we've talked mostly about the movement part of things, but nutrition is really important, right? And one thing that people really struggle with. So I intermittent fast, but one thing that I recommend for most people, if they're just starting out, they're thinking, oh, I need to change my food, I need to change, and it just feels too big. Time restricted eating. So make sure that you have at least 12 hours between your last meal and your first meal the following day. Just 12 hours. There's been research that shows that even if you eat exactly the same when you're starting out, you eat exactly the same, but like say you finish eating usually at 10 o'clock and then you get up in the morning and you start eating at 6 a.m., for example, you have your first coffee or your orange juice or whatever it is in the morning, and you've only got an 8-hour window of non-eating. Even if you close that and you stop eating at 8 p.m. and you don't eat in the morning till 8 a.m., so you've got 12 hours, there's evidence that shows that will help to reduce body weight initially. And then you can start to look at changing the actual content. Having said that, eating real food, if it's got ingredients, then it's not, real food is the ingredients, as Jamie Oliver says. So there'd be two top ones. There's so many things.
I love the fact that
Seek support.
instead of going to anything going related to
Exercise.
exercise, it's sleep. But I think that's brilliant, really. I really do. And there's a lot to be said for regular sleep patterns. Like when your sleep patterns get messed up, and as you get older, you really become sensitive to that. Like if you're used to going to bed at 9:30 and all of a sudden it's 11:30, you really feel that. And there's a doctor out of San Diego, Dr. Rhonda Patrick. She does a lot of great work, a lot of great studies, but they've come out with a lot of information about how important sleep is and staying within these sleep cycles so you're not throwing your body off, because your body does have a rhythm, and keeping that body in that rhythm is really important. So I think
Yeah.
that I love the fact that we're pushing towards exercise, but we're going to first off, sleep and nutrition, because good sleep and good nutrition puts you in place for then wanting to be able to go out and exercise or just take a walk or just, start in that process where you're starting to get the body in motion.
I think a really important thing when anyone's starting anything new is not to be too hard on ourselves either. I mean, you don't want to let yourself off the hook too easily. But when we're trying new things, like it might not work as perfectly as we expect it to, but every time we try again, we get closer to getting what it is that we want out of it. And like often we go, oh yeah, well, I tried that and it didn't work. It's like, well, you just need to try it again. But we get so hard on ourselves
Yeah.
that we look for an out.
Yeah.
But yeah, the like not everything, not the same thing, not the same routine. People go, is it better to work out in the morning or the afternoon, before food or after food? All of those things are dependent on every individual and what works for them. So yeah, giving yourself a bit of grace if you try something and it just doesn't click, and giving yourself the opportunity to try it again and find what works for you. Not every diet is perfect for every person.
Mhm.
Not every lifestyle hack is going to
Yeah.
fit for everyone. What works for one person isn't necessarily going to be what works for you. And
Mhm.
it's about like connecting with what you need.
Mhm. I find that it's all about just trying to get that one victory, that
Yeah.
one victory where you did that one thing and it's like good. And then, okay, I got this victory. Now I'm going to build on it. And now I'm going to do a little bit of nutrition and then I'm going to
Yeah.
try to get out. And, like with anything, when you're getting back up and going and if you're getting after it, you're going to be a little sore. You might need a day or two to kind of get yourself back in order, but that's okay. That's a good kind of sore
Mm,
instead of being sore because you're sitting around so much. But,
true.
stacking those victories, getting those going, building that morale, and getting that inner voice where you're like, okay, and then being conscious of it. I find that, it's the small things. It's the first victory. It's the walk around the block. It's the I got off my couch and did it because we sent that mental clock where I'm going to go out today, I'm going to do something. And the clock starts ticking and you're not getting it done. And it's like, okay, well, maybe I don't have time to do that, but I can still do this. And you still do something to give you that victory, that sense of victory that you just, whatever it was in that time frame, life happens, it got shifted, your time frame got shrunk, somebody called, needs you to pick them up at work, who knows? But you still found time to do something to claim some type of victory. And
Mm,
so, for me, I have found over the years that, just stacking victories. And then as you get more and more of those put together, obviously you can start pushing the bars back up a little bit. And all of us, like I said, at some time have been in really good shape. And I like to have that bar set that we know what to expect of ourselves. And at almost 60 years old, I honestly feel as good as I did when I was in my 30s. I do not write myself off and give myself excuses to do anything less than what I've ever done. And there's the only thing that is ever lacking is mental discipline. There is
mm,
nothing from a physical standpoint in my body that I cannot do what I didn't do, years ago. The only thing that's lacking is mental discipline. It has nothing to do with physical ability. I'm speaking for myself. Others might be different, but heck, you can go on YouTube or you can go on Instagram, and I can see guys that are 75 years old that are jacked, that are in perfect shape, and they're ripped. And I'm like, and I'm 60. It's like, suck it up, Buttercup. There's no reason why you can't be that guy too. And the only reason why is because you're waddling in excuses or, life happens, you get busy, just whatever. But it's all about just trying to get everything back in motion. So, with that being said, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast today. It's been a lot of fun. And Nadine, one thing I do before I let anybody go is I always give the guests sort of a last word or some final closing thoughts. So, with all that being said, is there anything before we go today you'd like to share with everybody?
uh, thank you for having me to start
Thank you
with.
for being here.
Yeah, I just continuing on from what you just said. I think that one of the challenges that we can face is that we think that we have to do all of the things all at once.
Hmm.
And so, if exercise is the thing that you decide to do, just do the exercise, get into a routine, as you said, and find ways of it working for you, and then build on the other things. I know I recommended sleep. I just think that's a no-brainer for whatever you're doing, because if you've had good quality sleep, then you can make better decisions, and there's proof around that. Yes. So I think that's it. Just yeah, take one step at a time, and we love patterns. So a really good way that you can do, and you were talking about like having those victories and stacking them. A great way of doing that is have a calendar or a chart or an app where you can record the days that you've done the thing that you're planning to do, and see it build.
Yeah.
And as you see it build, you'll gain momentum, you'll be encouraged. And just, yeah, I think that's a really handy way of like tracking your progress and building that momentum. And as you said, yeah, having those victories.
I love it. It's mind over matter, right? I
Yeah.
remember there was a time when I was younger where I went through uh, it was a military style program, and we were in a boot camp, and they always
Oh,
said it's mind over matter. We don't mind, and you don't matter. A good sense of humor goes a long way too. But just pushing yourself and setting the bar and just being realistic and being honest. It's I think really being honest with yourself and then just tracking out what's possible. And like you said, just try to gain momentum off of a calendar or putting things together. I do think also, like you said, if you could just start with exercise, that and the sleep. I find that, and you probably could share this, that once you start getting more fit, you automatically start getting more disciplined with what you eat because
yeah,
now all of a sudden your body is requesting, more nutrition and you're feeling good and you want to kind of start putting that together. And the body needs obviously, more nutrients and things to fuel the body when it starts becoming more active. So
yep.
the podcast now I've got lifehealththeuniverse.podcastpage.io. That's down below. So anybody that wants to pick up and hear more of Nadine's podcast, you can go right down there. Do you have a YouTube page also?
Yes. And again, I should memorize this, but if
It's
you search life, health, and the universe, that the YouTube channel is there, and also on all major podcast platforms. Life, health, and the universe is is the title of the podcast.
I love that. I love the fact that there's people like you that are out there that are sharing everything they can to make the world a better place. There's people like you that wake up and say, what information can I share to help my fellow person and make the world a better place? And that you put in the time, the effort. And I'm one of those guys, and I've done that for so long. And it's like, just getting up and saying like I've got to a point where I really don't follow my views very much anymore. But there was a time where I'm
Right.
like, oh, I'm putting so much into this and I only got 25 views. And it's like, but it all takes its place because the love and the compassion and the caring and your inner voice of saying that this is, my calling is to help the world. I love being around people like you. I love having you on my podcast. My goal is to support all these people with their hopes and dreams and get the word out and promote them and what they're doing. So I'm super grateful to have you on today. For anybody that's out there, all this information will be about down below. Did you have anything else you want to say, or are we good?
No, I agree with everything you said. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. And yeah, it seems like we're on a similar trajectory in
Yes.
terms of just yeah getting information out there and sharing it
100%.
with
And just, I have to
other.
put out a disclaimer. You were up at 6 a.m. in the morning to be on this call, Australia time. So for anybody that's out there, thank you so much. And thank you for all of our friends in Australia and around the world for watching the podcast. We will see everybody on the next one. Subscribe and share. Visit Nadine's website, and we will see you again on the next show. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.